Hello and welcome. You're watching In Depth. I'm Preeti Chaudhary. And today we are going to deep dive into India-Russia relations in the times of Modi and Putin. President Putin of Russia and Prime Minister Modi of India, both seen as strong, popular leaders of their country. Much is expected of them. But then, strong leaders also tend to chart their own course in the face of diplomatic jurisprudence. With new friends, USA unhappy with India buying armaments from old ally Russia, what does the current India-Russia summit hold for the future of what has been a 70-year-old relationship? Well, that is a question only Modi and Putin can answer.
On 14th September, Russia showcased its naval exercises in the northern Bering Sea and missile launches in Burlatia region as examples of cutting-edge defense technology up for sale in the international market. S-400 missiles were part of the show. Four days later, India's Defence Minister Nirmala Sitharaman confirmed that negotiations with Russia on the S-400 missiles were almost complete. On Friday, 5th October, India and Russia would sign the deal that would put a seal on a $6 billion deal to buy S-400 long-range surface-to-air missile systems from Russia.
By providing the Rafale and the S-400, the government is strengthening the Indian Air Force to counter the shortfalls of our depleting numbers.
But that is not the only pact that Narendra Modi and Vladimir Putin are going to put their signatures on. And along with the multi-billion-dollar defense deals to be signed between India and Russia, the two heads of government will also discuss the issue of security challenges in the AFPAC region as well as the threat of an unstable Pakistan.
It is something that basically it boils down to what serves your national interest the best. Now, somebody may have a nuanced approach towards Indo-Russian ties or S-400 signing or our growing relationship. We have had a matured relationship with Russia from the Soviet times and subsequently under President Putin especially, who was very committed to the relationship with India. Now, their growing relationship with Pakistan is not really a cause of concern. Should not be a cause of concern for India. It had never been. I've been through that and I know. Like we are going all over. We have friends across the world. Even during the Cold War times, we were friends with the US and Russia. So there has never been an issue like that. And I think that Americans have been informed that what our relationship they understand.
Also on the agenda for the annual summit is trade and economic cooperation, international regional forums, cultural and people-to-people contact, counter-terrorism, Iran, energy security, Syria, science and technology, civil nuke cooperation, space research and discussion on site selection for the next Russian-built nuclear power plant. The two sides are also likely to sign a deal on Mi-17 helicopters. India has been talking to Russia about the recent defense cooperation moves between Moscow and Islamabad and have diplomatically questioned the need for such cooperation. On its part, Russia has been wary of India's newfound closeness to the US, particularly in areas of defense and security. This summit is being seen as an opportunity for both sides to assuage the doubts that have crept up in India-Russia relations.
I do not think the US will really employ sanctions against India just because they definitely need India as a strategic ally in the Asia-Pacific region. If they do, there's always a way around. Instead of using dollars to trade for defense deals, why not use rupees or rubles or some other currency which is not affected by the Americans?
So the real test of the summit this year would be how convincing India can be in juggling priorities. US displeasure at trying to rebuild defense relations with Russia, and Moscow's irritation at Delhi cozying up to Washington.
The India-Russia annual summit comes at a critical juncture. Despite threats of sanctions by the United States of America, India is determined to go ahead with defense deals with Moscow, including the multi-billion-dollar S-400s. While India shows commitment to the strategic defense partnership between Russia and New Delhi, India will also be raising concerns with regards to the newfound relationship between Russia and Pakistan.
Prime Minister Modi hailed President Putin as a good friend at the Sochi summit earlier this year in May. The two leaders are set to share a good rapport when it comes to bilateral talks. Here is how friendship between the two countries has fared in the past few years, and how it also has been a good time for the sale of purchase of arms by both brothers in arms.
The annual summit comes at a time when the ties between Russia and India seem to be dwindling in recent months. The backdrop: India seemed closer to the US and Russia was seen as favouring Pakistan and even China. But then Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Russian President Putin are said to share a good rapport, as evident during their multiple bilateral meets. The two leaders would be meeting for the fifth time since the last annual summit, when Prime Minister Modi travelled to Russia in 2017. In fact, soon after Vladimir Putin was re-elected as the President of Russia, Prime Minister Modi flew to Sochi in May 2018 for a tete-a-tete with the Russian President. The one-day informal Sochi summit, which was listed as agenda-less, was seen as a trust and friendship boost between Moscow and New Delhi. 2 months after the Sochi meet, Prime Minister Modi held talks with President Putin on the sidelines of the BRICS summit in Johannesburg. Prime Minister Modi defined the talks as wide-ranging and productive.
Annual summits and the informal summit that Prime Minister Modi started in Sochi last year, they go a long way in telling you that if we have an issue, let's talk about it. And that's what the whole dialogue business is all about. All the issues that we had have already been resolved during the IRIGC meeting that we had with Sushma Swaraj in Moscow recently. In this one, these concerns are actually not that very great, neither for Russia, nor for India, nor for the US.
So far, 18 annual summits have been held in rotation between India and Russia since the year 2000. The last summit in India was held in Goa in 2016, where key defense deals had been agreed upon, including the supply of S-400 air defense systems. The 18th summit in June 2017, held in St. Petersburg, witnessed the St. Petersburg Declaration, marking the 70th year of diplomatic relations between the two countries. The declaration was an action plan for deepening not only political and economic development, but also to ensure a benchmark of stability in times of global instability. From the days of the Soviet Union, Delhi and Moscow have enjoyed a special relationship. Russia today remains India's largest defense supplier, accounting for the supply of 60% of defense equipment in terms of value. And this time, as President Putin comes for the 19th summit, and in a symbol of reverse engineering, India is gifting 3 MiG-21 fighter jets to Russia. Interestingly, the MiG-21s were never inducted in the Soviet or Russian air forces. The technology was transferred to India, and India built its own aircrafts. Now, 1 Type 75 and 2 Type 77 MiG-21 fighter jets built at Hindustan Aeronautics Limited will be flown back to Moscow and inducted into the Russian Air Force. The gift to President Putin by Prime Minister Modi is set to underscore the fact that despite US efforts to pry India out of Russia's arms, India-Russia defense ties continue to grow.
A 4-time president and twice a prime minister, winning more than 76% of the votes in the May 2018 elections, Putin has been ruling Russia and the hearts of its people for almost 2 decades. But then, who is the real Vladimir Putin? How did he make it to the top in the post-Soviet era, post-Yeltsin era?
In 2012, as he entered Kremlin as the President of Russia, Vladimir V. Putin was walking in once again to continue his rule over Russia. Despite allegations of electoral fraud, Putin was taking over the helms for the third time.
As I fulfill the duties of the President of the Russian Federation,
the journey has been remarkable, from a young spy in the Soviet era to becoming one of the most powerful and feared leaders in the world. No one could have imagined that the breakup of the Soviet Union would create and concentrate so much power into the hands of one person. It is almost as if a Tsar has been reborn in Russia. In 1952, security guard Vladimir Putin and Maria Shalomova had a son. They named him Vladimir, son of Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Vladimirovich grew up in a communal housing on Baskov Lane in St. Petersburg, then called Leningrad. An average student with no remarkable achievement to remember him by, the young Putin finished schooling and went to college to study law. The young boy, who had first wanted to be a pilot, then a sailor, got swayed by the idealism of the times and in 1975 joined the Komishet Gosudar Steni Bezopasnosti, or USSR's main security agency, the KGB. It was here that the real talents of Putin got to be recognized. Within months of joining, he was transferred to be trained in the elite counterintelligence division. In 1985, Putin was posted to the KGB headquarters in Dresden, East Germany. A posting that lasted till those heady days of 1990 when the Berlin Wall came down and the German Democratic Republic imploded in the wake of German unification. Putin was there at his KGB headquarters facing a mob when he realized that retaliation of the olden days was no longer possible because Moscow had gone silent. From the front line in East Germany, Putin saw how one after another the centrally planned economies of Eastern Europe staggered to disintegration. Out in St. Petersburg, he saw Russia's troubled early transition to a free market democratic system. Lieutenant Colonel Vladimir Putin of the KGB retired in 1991 and made his way back to Leningrad. The future looked bleak as the Soviet Union came crashing down. Putin considered himself lucky when he found work at Leningrad University. He was planning to do his PhD. But Putin soon found himself involved in politics and administration as the now renamed St. Petersburg began to reorient itself in post-Soviet Russian Federation. In 1996, Putin moved to Moscow, to the center of political power. In the next 3 years, his rise was phenomenal as he worked his way through the intrigues and plotting at the heart of Russian presidency. He was soon noticed by Boris Yeltsin, the President of Russia, and the man credited with having struck the final nail in the coffin of the USSR. In early 1997, President Boris Yeltsin appointed Putin Deputy Chief of Presidential Staff. By 1998, he was the director of FSB, Federal Security Services, KGB's new age successor. A year later, when President Boris Yeltsin sacked the government, he replaced his Prime Minister with Vladimir Putin. On the last day of 1999, as the millennium changed, Vladimir Putin became the acting president of the Russian Federation, and Russia and the world would never be the same again. Putin's no-nonsense reputation and his cold and calculated moves during the Second Chechen War won him much popularity and his first presidential elections.
Early Putin was an economic reformer. He put in a flat tax and went from budget deficits and default rapidly to budget surpluses and debt repayment. But he also ended up having to take on the oligarchs as they rose in power. And in 2003, 2004, he took down the most powerful and politically challenging of the oligarchs. That was an oil tycoon called Mikhail Khodorkovsky. And that spelled a change in the Putin regime, if you like. From then on, he was a tough guy who required unconditional loyalty from the movers and shakers in business and the economy.
Putin remained president for 2 terms, till 2008. And from 2008 to 2012, he was prime minister, and then president again. In 2014, Russia under Putin intervened in a political unrest in Ukraine and then annexed Crimea. Putin, it seemed, was busy bringing back Russia's authority in the global power scenario. While his approval rates peaked to an all-time high on home turf, the Ukraine intervention isolated him at the global power table. G8 and G20 summits ostracized him. Europe and America were on high alert. Putin, over the years, through his various terms as president and prime minister at Kremlin, had changed Russia and its role in world politics. The West had tried to rein in his international meddling by imposing economic sanctions against Russia. But Putin managed to keep Russia relevant and cultivated a loyal following within his country. In the process of regaining Russia's lost influence over the world, Putin also earned for himself the sobriquet of an autocrat. Western media began referring to him as Tsar Putin. And Putin made clear his dislike for his critics and the Western powers and their media houses. In September 2015, Russia joined Syria's President Bashar al-Assad's forces to fight the extremist Islamic State. But Putin's true motives were soon questioned. Reports of Russian airstrikes targeting many of Assad's enemies, rebel groups in Syria's civil war, started surfacing. As Europe and the world grappled with new extremism under the banner of ISIS, the most powerful country in the world geared up to elect its own leader. And the new, golden-haired President of the United States is expected to ease the US diplomatic and economic pressure on Russia. Putin, it seems, had found his proverbial golden fleece.
If he says great things about me, I'm going to say great things about him.
With that, it's a wrap on In-Depth. Stay with us. News and updates continue on the other side.
Thanks for watching the video. For more such news and updates, please like, share and subscribe to India Today. Also check out our other great videos from our channel. We know you would love to.